Hi everyone, welcome back to episode 4. We're going to be continuing on from what we did in episode 3. So what we're going to do now is we've built our drop down with our dates in. Now what we want to do is make it populate the comparator control that we have. So the first step is we're first going to build a client state parameter that we're going to use to drive this particular control. So we're going to have a new one. So first step, let's just close that down for a sec. I always like to take the example data that I've got in the control and use that to populate the client state parameter that we're then going to use to populate it, because I can make sure I've connected things up properly. So we go to config, go to edit. So remember, I'm going to put it in JSON format, hit that comparator. Now you'll notice here we've got name, content type, heading, original content, change content. Name, content type. So if we come and look at what we're seeing here, so we've got two items being shown together, but we're only going to show one data item. So we come back, and because we're dealing with HTML, I want to use this bottom one. So we're going to put it in JSON. I'm going to strip out the top one because I'm not interested in that. So it's got name, content type, heading, but I'm not going to worry about heading in this case. This is optional. Original content and change content. So these are what I'm going to call it. Again, I don't necessarily need the name as well. So just for example, if I take name out, we apply that, what we're just going to literally see is the two values displayed side by side. Now I could put the name in and it's going to put a nice little heading in, but I'm not worried about that in this because I'm just going to look at this particular thing. We could add some extra controls as part of the form if we wanted to. Right, so let's go back to our JSON. I'm happy with that, so let's copy that. We can click cancel. Let's go and click create our client state parameter. Let's add. So we're going to call this compare data. Again, it's going to be type JSON. Scroll my screen up the bottom. So there we go. JSON. We're going to edit that. Let's populate it. Oh, that's not good. Put that in there. Right. So we apply that. So as we can see, our data is in here. And we'll just come back to our control, and we're going to change this to be associated with a data item, and it's of state dot compare data. So you'll notice it hasn't changed, but it's because I put that data in there. So let's save what we've got to so far. Now, to get this to work, let me just get rid of that. We need to write a script that when the drop down is picked, it's going to look through the API data. Now I could have stored the data that I've got in that data control in a client state parameter if I wished, which would have been fine. But I'm trying to keep that data to a minimum because I've already got the data in that data control and it's being held. So I'm just going to iterate through that again because it's only a small set of data and bring out the data items that I want. So right, so we're going to now build our script to go and pick from that drop down. When somebody picks the date field, it's then going to find the two data items and show them on screen. So what we need to do, we're going to go back to our script. We're going to build a new client script, and we're going to call that compare date. Compare date picked. You can call them whatever you like. It's just the name I'm going to use. Right. So when the drop down is clicked, we get an event. And that event's going to have a payload, and that payload is then going to contain the item, which is then going to contain the ID. So the first thing I'm going to do is collect that data set. So I'm going to say const ID, let's call it record ID equals, and you'll see in the top part here we've got event, so we're going to say event dot payload dot item dot ID. Now, if you're not sure at all when something comes along and you're like, okay, I don't know what's going to get passed in, what you can do, and what I tend to do, is I create like a debug. And what that debug does, and I'll create one here and we'll just run through this because it's a good thing to look at. Right, so I've got one as an example, save a bit of typing. So let's create a new client script and we'll call it debug. Oh, no, let's call it debug. And in that debug, I'm just going to output to the console. So I've got one I created earlier. So I'm going to say event debug, and I'm going to literally pass through the JSON. So I could do it for API, but I'm just going to do it for event in this case. So what I can do, so let's just save that. Just make sure my other code is okay. Yep, I'm not left it half hanging. Is what we're going to do is if we go to the drop down and we'll go to the event. So let's get rid of this. I'm going to add a new event, and I'm going to say when an item is drop down selected, item clicked. There we go. And I'm going to have my thing just do my script. So where is it? Debug script. So I'm just going to add that. We'll save that. So now if we open the URL, so that's all nicely opened. If we go view debug JavaScript console, get the JavaScript console up alongside. So I changed to my notes changed. Now if I click something, look, we now see the JSON appearing for that particular one. So you can see I'm getting element, and then it's got item and then ID. What I would suggest is if you're not sure what this is, put this into this website. I think it's called Pretty JSON Online. JSON formatter and validator. Not that one. Let's just. There we go. This is the one I use. So if we come back and look at the data that came out, where has it gone? There we go. So we just grab that, drop that into here, and just say make pretty. I find it a lot easier to read then. So we can see, you see payload. So that's what we're going to get past, item and then ID. And we also get the label. So if we put something in the label we want to read, so that's our sysid. So if we come back to our code, where we were, our code, and remember I said record ID is our event, payload item ID. So we go back to the JSON, we've got event, which is the parameter of payload item ID. So there we go. So we can easily see how we're getting to that data item. So we've got that there. Next thing we're going to do is we now need to go and look through our data set to find the relevant item that we wanted within there. So what we're going to do is we're going to simply just iterate through. So we're going to say API, remember we've got the API dot data, audit data dot results dot for each. Let's type it right this time. And we use the same thing as I do before. We're just going to iterate through this. I'll put that there, so we're going to get that. And we can say const sysid equals item dot. Now, if you're not sure, if you can't remember, just go back to the data, the audit data, and we can say it was we want the sysid value field, don't we? Sysid value we want for this. So we can say item dot sys underscore, is it sys underscore ID dot value. If you're not sure, always go back and check, it's worth doing. Yeah, sys underscore value ID, great. So we collected that one, and we're going to literally say if our what was it, record ID, record ID equals. Now I'm using the 3 equals because they may not be exactly the same, but we're just going to use the 3 equals for this, and sys ID. So if they're equal, what I want to do is I'm going to say const new data, we call it that for the sake of argument, equals, and we're going to build the JSON that we had before. Now I can't remember the exact format that we wanted, so if we go back to our client state parameter, here it is. So I'm just going to pinch that. Saves me retyping it. Oh no, not data, client scripts. Let's paste that in here. Let's get rid of the brackets. Let's put some indentation in to make it look pretty. So we want the HTML, then we've got original content and change content. So we're going to change those. So remember our data fields that we had, they were called old value and new value. So we want old value dot, well, we could use value or display value because they're going to be the same, but I will use display value. So I'm going to say old value dot display value, new value dot display value. There we go. So client scripts. So the original content was, then we go again, we say item dot old, no it's not old, value dot display value, and is item dot new value display value. So that should collect it. I'll just go and double check I've got that right. Old value and new value, yes, that is correct. So we've got that, but we now need to put that back into our, well, we're going to put it into our array. So what we're going to do is we're going to put that into, oh yeah, did I create the array? No, I didn't. So in our client state, remember the compare data is actually an array, because you'll see here it's got a square bracket. So because we, in the comparator control, we could have many showing. So I just want to show the one. So we go back to our client script. Let's put that in. So we've got bar compare, we'll call it new compare data equals array. Scroll down. Then we say our new compare data dot push, and it's going to be our new data. Now if I want to do any debugging at this point, I could output to console, like you saw me doing that debug thing. I can just say console.log and then output that there. So yeah, I can put something in to push this out and exit from here. So what we could actually say at this point is, oh no, let's do it in the right order. So I want to stay in here. I'm going to say client state, client state, API.setState, and we're going to put in a new compare data, and I think my client state was called, yeah, it was compare data. Let's grab that. And then we just simply return from here to exit out of that loop, and then we're done. So, you know, that should literally now, when we click the drop down, find the value and populate that control. So let's just save that. So I'm going to change my drop down. So that drop down we had, so drop down 2, which we've still got here. We're going to change it to our compare date picked. So what we're going to do is we click on here, delete that one, add a new one, which is going to be our compare date picked. Save. Now, what we're going to do, we hit let's open URL path. Still got one open from earlier. So if we go to notes changed, we pick, there we go. See now, it's showing what we had before and what we changed on each time. So we can literally go through and look at each one to see how it changed. Now we can do a little bit more around this to just tidy this up a little bit. So we've got that still working. So let's come back to here. Now I really want some text before the drop down, because that drop down on its own really doesn't give me much. So what we can say add before. Now there's some, if I just do text, stylized text is probably the better one, because you can then decide how you want it to look. So pick some stylized text. Yeah, got it. And again, we don't want any presets. I'm just going to say none. So let's remove that preset. And we can say, please select the date you wish to view. Now I don't need it as a heading. I just maybe put it as a H4. Yeah, that looks all right. Now you'll notice it's put the drop down underneath that. That's because in our container we've got them going down, but in our container we want them to go across, and it's stretched out that particular drop down to be going all the way across. Now that might be fine. Shall we can save that, preview that and see what that's going to look like. It may look fine. Let's see, no, it changed. Yeah, that works, but oh, I don't like this piece here. I've got that going on. So what I want to do, I want to put a little bit of an indent in there, so we can go to the style. I can say to the margin, let's put some margin. I think we'll go with medium. That was it, wasn't it? Medium. So I'm trying to get it to line up, but we've already got padding already in place around this particular drop down. I want to, let's change the style of that one. If I put that to none, what does that look like? Let's save, let's hit preview. Yeah. Oh, it hasn't really. That didn't seem to work. So let's do this as an open URL. I find sometimes that works a bit better. Yeah, there we go. See, it didn't come through. So sometimes if you make a change to a preview and it doesn't show, just open as URL, and then that would work for you. So there we go. Yeah, we can do a few other things. We can maybe put a box around this, put some color in, that kind of stuff. But the basic idea of what we've done here today, so if we go back, is we've done a number of different things. We've created a data set. So we've collected some data from the system ready. We've then used a script once that data is loaded. So in our client scripts, we've populated the drop-down list that we want from that. And then what we've done is we've got an event on the drop-down, which then we are then firing to go and find the data, which we're then using to push to that control to show that. Now we've got a few other little things we can tidy up here. So if we go back to our client state parameters, for example, that one. This particular one, we don't need it to be pre-populated with some data, so we could just leave it as a blank array to start with. So we do that. So that leaves us as just a nice blank thing here. And there we go. So hopefully that little episode has been useful, just finishing off those two pieces that we did. So in episode 3 we went through how to populate the drop down from a data set, and now we're using the event that's being driven from that drop down to populate that control. Hopefully that's been useful. Again, like, subscribe, please leave me some comments on things you'd like me to run through in these little episodes. Thanks again for watching.